Welcome to Relation Tales. Please like this video and subscribe. Relation Tales. Hear the story. Today's story is about girlfriend cheated with her boss's husband just when Opus was thinking of marrying her and calling to ask her dad's permission. Can you believe it? Well, my friends, go to the story and listen to her tale. I first met Bob about 2 years ago. He walked into the restaurant where I worked as a hostess, and we talked while he waited for the rest of his party to arrive. He was tall, kind of thin but muscular, and had a great smile, but he was obviously kind of shy. I could tell even then because from the way he spoke to me, with indirect little compliments, not being able to look me in the eye, that he was interested. The more aggressive guys would have taken my constant rubbing on them and touching them and had me at their apartment already, but this was a refreshing change. This was a guy who wanted to actually get to know me, period. I'm cute but I'm not supermodel. My name is Brenda. I'm 5'4" and weigh about 160. I have a nice thin waist, thick gorgeous legs, long dark hair, and a killer smile. According to Bobby, my eyes, a deep crystalline green, are my best feature with my lips a close second. At least that's what he says. But whenever we made love it wasn't my eyes or my smile he was grabbing and concentrating on. Anyway, as the night progressed I could tell that Bobby wasn't comfortable there. The group that he was a part of was obviously his co-workers, and though his work was praised several times, he just didn't seem to be that into the whole party thing. So I decided to rescue him. I approached their table and told him that he had an emergency phone call. He looked shocked and said that no one knew he was here. As he left the table, I followed closely behind him and ushered him into our employee lounge. "Where's the phone?" he asked. "Well, I began. You seemed a little uncomfortable, so I thought that I would get you out of there. If you want to go back, just tell them that it was nothing and continue with your party. But if you do want to leave, I'll go back and tell them that you were called away." "What do I have to pay you for doing this?" he asked nervously. I quickly wrote down my phone number on a piece of paper and said, "Call this number tomorrow and we'll see what happens." Bobby left the restaurant, and I went back to his table and explained that he had been called away. I didn't give a reason so that he could tell them whatever he wanted and there'd be no conflicts in our stories. The next day Bobby called me and I wheedled my way into a date. We had so much fun that I didn't want it to ever end. He did things for me that the thin pretty girls take for granted and bigger girls get only before we put out, if ever. He was a perfect gentleman and I loved the way he looked at me. Oh sure, I sometimes wished that he was a little more forceful, but I was crazy about him so it didn't matter. Our first kiss was great. He closed his eyes and placed his lips against mine with a gentleness that I still remember today. When we broke the kiss after what seemed like forever, but was probably only a few seconds, the look in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. This was my guy, and I was his. Update: over the next few months our relationship progressed at its own pace. We kissed more and often. We made out. And finally, long after I was ready for it, we had sex. I don't know why it took us so long, but it was great. I was kind of expecting to have him disappear afterwards like so many guys do. When Bobby showed up the next morning before he went to work, which had never happened before, I was expecting him to break things off since he'd had his ride. I almost tried to avoid him just so I could enjoy the glow from the sex for a little longer before the crushing blow. He looked so sad and then hugged me and gave me flowers and told me I was the most special thing he'd ever seen. I almost cried. I was so happy because I was just not used to this. A few months later Bobby got really serious and scared, and I got nervous again. My mind told me that even this saint of a man had just gotten enough big girl and was ready to move on. "Just go ahead and say it," I told him. My voice was harsher than I wanted it to be because I thought I knew what was coming. "Brenda, I have a problem," he said. "So what's your problem?" "You want to skin your girlfriend, right?" He looked kind of shaken. "You mean after we duck, you what?" I asked. As you can see, I was ready, or so I thought. "Well, I don't want to leave you. I just want us to be together more. So I was hoping." Boom. "I know you're not ready to get married," you said, but my head exploded. Did he mention marriage? "I was hoping we could live together," he said. I was shocked. I knew I was pretty, and there were some men who liked my body. Actually, most men liked my body, but they only wanted it on a trial basis. Bobby, on the other hand, really loved me. I sat there with my mouth open. I was 27 years old, had probably ducked at least 15 or 20 guys. But I had never been anyone's girlfriend before Bobby, and now not only had he mentioned marriage, but he wanted me to live with him. Half the guys I ducked didn't even want to be seen with me afterwards, and this guy wanted me to be solely his, permanently. Over the years, as you can tell, I developed a tough skin out of necessity, but that night it disappeared. Our relationships did have one glaring problem, but it was minor. We were compatible in every way that matters, and rarely argue. He was content to spend most of his time just being with me. Of course, a lot of that time we spent in bed, but we were both happy, so who cares? Our biggest problem was Bobby's shyness. He almost hated to be around people. I'm not talking about parties. I'm talking about any group of people where he didn't know or feel comfortable with everyone there. It took him 8 months to build up the courage to meet my parents. When it came to going out with my friends or co-workers, well, I was becoming a hermit. For the most part, it didn't bother me. I was finally in love and with a great guy. I wanted all of my friends to at least see him once or twice. I'd tried on several occasions to make it happen, but there was always something that came up. Usually it would come up at the last minute, so he couldn't make it. I always ended up going alone or not going. Some of my co-workers were beginning to think the photo on my desk was a fake. I'd hear the meaner ones talking behind my back. Really, who would want to be with him, or those fat girls will say anything. So when Rochelle Davenport, our district manager, had a big party planned at her house, I put my foot down. "Bobby," I said, "if you can't manage to spend one evening with my coworkers for me, then maybe you don't love me as much as you claim to. Maybe this relationship has no future." "I'll do it," he said sadly. The expression on his face told me that maybe I'd pushed him too far, but he'd agreed to it. "So whatever. You're a great guy, baby. I just want to share you with my friends for one night," I said. "You're handsome. You've got a great job, a great car, and my friends will love you," I assured him. So 2 nights later, Bobby dressed in a pair of dress pants and a jacket and waited for me on the couch in our living room. It used to be his living room, but we both live there now. It of course took me longer to get ready than it did for him to wash his 8 Mustang GT, shower, and get dressed. This was mainly because I was pulling out all of the stops this time. I wanted everyone to see me with my sweetie, but I wanted them to know that I was a beautiful, desirable woman. In short, for one night I wanted them to see me the way he did. When we got to Rochelle's house, as we got out of the car, all eyes were on us. First they looked at me. My dress was tight enough, but the thing that drew the most attention was my man. They'd all heard the stories of shy, reclusive Bobby, but most of them didn't believe he existed, and the few that did thought that there had to be something wrong with him for him to be with me. Most of them thought I was a trifle big, and the ones that realized that I was just voluptuous thought I was a whore. When Bobby came around and took my hand, the evening was sealed. Rochelle dragged her emaciated ass over to greet us almost as soon as we parked on her lawn. Her husband, I'd heard him described as a hot older guy, was with her. He was definitely older, but the hot part, not so much. He was a little too grandpa monster for me. He took my hand and welcomed me to their home. Their house was huge. It was like a European castle dropped into the suburbs. After Bobby and I made the rounds, which meant I dragged him around to make sure every single living organism at the party, including the pets, saw us together, he quickly retreated into the shadows in a corner. I wanted him to be more ducking outgoing for just one night. I had to give serious consideration to what my future would be like with him. Now that most of the guys there had seen me with him, and Bobby was kind of hot, maybe I could upgrade. Several of the women present had tried to make a run at him, and he quickly rebuffed their attentions. During the evening I noticed that whenever my glass was empty, Rochelle's husband was there in a second to refill it. By the time he offered to give me a tour of their house and the grounds, I was feeling no pain. As soon as we got upstairs away from the crowd, I noticed his hand on my ass, and it was no accident. "I've heard a lot about you," he breathed into my ear. "Like what?" I asked. If it hadn't been for all of the liquor, I'd have moved his hand a long time ago. But the combination of liquor and frustration was amazing. "Like maybe you'd be better with an older lion as opposed to a younger mouse." He leaned in and kissed me. It felt really good to have someone go after what they wanted. He didn't wait. He didn't ask. He just saw what he wanted and took it. My failure to stop him only led to him becoming even bolder. The next thing I remembered, he had me in a room upstairs on my back, making out like we were teenagers. We only stopped when someone opened the door and looked in, looking for the bathroom. "Hey, Brenda, your honey was looking for you." That tore it for me right then. Bobby couldn't even hold a conversation with a few people that were important to me for a few minutes. I locked the door and noticed that I felt kind of woozy as I stepped back towards the bed. I looked at the clock next to the bed. Had I really been away from the party for nearly an hour? The clock must be wrong. I wasn't that drunk. As I stretched out on the bed, I noticed that Phil was already undressed. "Pretty sure of yourself, aren't you?" I asked. "Nope, just pretty sure of you," he smirked. I wonder what he meant by that, but I didn't have time or the inclination to figure it out. Old Phil pushed me down. The way he had me feeling right now was as if I was just some whore he'd picked up. But because I was drunk, and because it was so different, I decided to go with it for a while longer. This was so bad. The only thing good about it was that it was over quickly. I just laid there trying to figure out what I was going to do. I didn't want Bobby to know about this at all. Plus there was the problem of Rochelle. If she found out about this and didn't believe me, she might even fire me. So I just lay there and finally fell asleep. Update 1. The next thought I had was that there was someone talking. When I opened my eyes, I noticed that it was light again. That meant it was morning and I'd been here all night. Where was Bobby? How would I explain this? I heard the voices again. "What did you say her name was again?" asked Phil in a loud whisper. "It's Brenda. Now go get her out of here," replied Rochelle. "Well, you invited her. Why can't you get rid of her?" winded Phil. "You ducked her and left her here, so it's your problem." "It's only my problem because her little boyfriend turned you down," said Phil. If he was here, he'd be my problem, so she's yours. But she works for you, why can't you do it? Asked Phil in a quiet voice. You didn't seem to have any problem talking to her last night, said Rochelle. Oh, you know how it is. Every once in a while you want a big one, she continued. She wasn't even good though, whined Phil. If I had paid anything, I'd want my money back. Hey, her eyes are open. Go ahead, said Rochelle. At that point Phil came over to the bed and I noticed that the daylight didn't do much for him. He definitely looked much worse in the morning. Hey, Bonnie, he said, smiling. Brenda, I said. Whatever, I called you a cab. Shouldn't you get dressed? He asked. I asked. Oh, your honey boy. He left last night, said Phil in a frustrated tone. Took one look at you sprawled out there and just ran out, he continued. Several of the ladies at the party offered to go home with him, but no soap, he said. Rochelle knows you ducked me. I asked. Of course, we have an open marriage. That's the point of these parties, to try out different people and different things. They add a little fire to our relationship, he said proudly. Actually, we hate each other so much, we couldn't even think about having sex, he said. The only reason we don't get a divorce is because we'd be worse off alone. He said. A pretty messed up relationship. That's why it's open, he said. Well, I'm pretty sure it's messed up mine. It's going to take a lot to get him to forgive this. I don't think he will, said Phil. He seems like the true blue type, Phil said. You know, like he was madly in love with you. Like you were he laughed his dream girl or something. I'm sure seeing you laying there with your legs all open just broke his little heart. He laughed again. I turned around and looked at him. Why would you let him come in here? I asked. I didn't. Rochelle did. He turned her down flat and she really wanted him. A lot of the women at the party did. But he wasn't having it. He said he loved you, and he's going to marry you, he laughed again. So Rochelle brought him up here to show him that you've had no problem doing it, so he should too, said Phil. She can be a really vindictive bitch when she wants something, he laughed. So the two of you just ducked up my life for the fun of it. I hissed. Hey, you're a big girl. A very big girl. You knew why we came up here, he replied. You know what they say. A fool and her honey are soon parted, he smirked. I got what was left of my clothes and put them on, and of course my dress was ruined and would no longer close. I found my cell phone in my purse. I called Bobby because I didn't want him to see me like this. It would only make things worse. I was hoping that he'd gone to work so I could slip into our place and fix myself up. Then I'd call him and be waiting for the confrontation when he got home. This would be our first major fight, but I was sure if I promised him it would never ever happen again. Maybe in time we'd get past this. Bobby didn't pick up. In fact, my call went straight to voicemail as if his phone was turned off. Bobby never turned his phone off. He always answered my call on the first ring. He was obviously angry. The cab arrived. I spotted Rochelle on my way out. I don't know what made me do it, but seeing that skinny woman standing there smirking at me caused me to have a temporary loss of brain function. So as I passed her, I just took a swing at her and knocked her flat on her skinny. I got into the cab holding my dress together and with as much dignity as I could muster gave the driver my address. He must have been trying for a big tip because he didn't say a single word to me. He just drove. Update 2. When I got to our building, though everything seemed normal, I felt a sense of dread. I looked around and didn't see Bobby's Mustang in our parking spot, so he wasn't here. That was a good thing, I thought. As I got to our floor, I saw that someone was moving in or moving out. There were a lot of suitcases lining the halls. They looked like our luggage, but then most suitcases really do look the same. I got my keys from my purse. Rochelle and her ducking husband hadn't heard the last of this, but first I had to straighten out my life. For some strange reason, I couldn't get my key in the lock. Maybe I was still slightly drunk. I concentrated and it just didn't fit. I stopped all the way down to the first floor to the building manager. Mr. Colty was home, luckily. I knocked on his door and the door opened. Mr. Colty, there's something wrong with my key. I can't get in, I said. He didn't even open his door all the way, which was unusual. He was one of the most open, friendliest people we knew. There's nothing wrong with your key, miss, he said. Miss, I wondered. When did I become miss? Then why won't it fit in the lock? I asked in my most polite tone. Because the locks were changed at the request of the tenant of record, he said. And in the middle of the night, I might add. I couldn't think. I started crying. And when he saw this, Mr. Colty just shook his head and closed his door. I called Bobby again and left a message for him. I told him how sorry I was and how he didn't understand what had happened. I told him that I loved only him and that I'd do anything to make it up to him. Then with no one else to turn to, I called my mom. Before she got there, I went back up to the hall outside the apartment and changed into some other clothes. She drove me back to her house without saying a word. As we got in, I guessed the silence was too much for her. What did you do? She asked. What? A guy you barely know locks me, your own daughter, out of our apartment, and all you want to know is what did I do? Brenda, your dad and I aren't stupid. We know about the life you used to lead, and even though we only met him once, we really thought that Bobby was the guy for you. He loves you so much, and after he called us 2 days ago, we just assumed. He called you? I asked. Yep, 3 times, she said. The first call he just hung up. I guess he didn't remember that with caller ID we knew who he was, but then he called back and it was the cutest thing I'd ever seen. So old-fashioned too, she said. What was? I asked. Well, he said that he was going to do something for you, Brenda. Something that he really was afraid to do, felt really uncomfortable with, but you really wanted it and you'd promised to do anything he wanted in exchange. We were thinking, oh my god, he's gonna make her do something really kinky. But he was calling to ask your dad's permission to ask you to marry him. Can you believe that? Nobody does that anymore. When she said that, I felt the tears well up and my chest got tight. The third time he called, he wanted to show me the ring he'd gotten for you, so I could tell him whether or not you'd like it. You'd have to be crazy not to. What did you think when you first saw it? She asked. Then I started crying, and my mom asked me again, what did you do? Brenda, please tell me you didn't turn him down. Brenda, I'm your mother and I love you, but you're not getting any younger. You're cute, but you may never get another offer this good. He's a really nice young man. He's handsome. He's got a good job, and he obviously loves you. That boy really thinks you're something special. Why wouldn't you marry him? She demanded. My mom's mouth dropped open as if she'd just realized something. That's why you've never brought any boys home to meet us. She stuck her hand over her mouth and looked at me and then said, you're a lesb. No, Mom, I'm not a lesb. I'm a slut, I answered. Then why haven't you brought any guys home? Sluts get lots of guys, she replied. Mom, they don't want a relationship with me. They just want to duck me. Bobby was the first one that wanted to stick around, I said. Then why didn't you want to marry him? Mom, it's a long story. Right now I just want to sleep. I called in and told my boss that I wouldn't be in for a couple of days. I thought I heard laughter in the background as I hung up. Then I called Bobby and left another message for him to please call me. I tried calling his job, but the lady who answered the phone asked who I was and after a moment asked me to leave a message. When I asked her if he was at work, she said that company policy forbid the release of any information about their employees. But just yesterday you told me exactly which restaurant he was having lunch at and gave me directions, I said. It's a new policy, she said. Then she told me to have a nice day, bish, and hung up. I called Bobby again and left yet another message. Then I tried to go to sleep, but I just couldn't get comfortable. I wasn't used to this bed and I wasn't used to sleeping without him. I couldn't believe how much I missed him wrapping his arms around me. Finally, I drifted off to sleep, but it didn't last long. Then I heard my cell phone ring and woke up. I tried to get to the phone before it stopped ringing, but I couldn't find it in time. I dropped the phone on the bed and it started ringing again. Hello, Bobby, I said into the phone breathlessly. Nope, it's Tina, said the voice. Tina was one of the women I worked with. She was more of an acquaintance than a friend, so I was wondering why the duck she'd be calling me. What do you want, Tina? How are you feeling, Brenda? Well, Brenda, seeing as how you've probably broken up with that Bobby guy, I was wondering if you'd be interested in making a trade. What the duck are you talking about? Well, a girl like you can't be too choosy, so I was thinking I'll give you my brother's phone number and you give me Bobby's. I hung up the phone. Tina's brother Matt was married and had 3 kids, 2 of them with his wife, another with one of their teenage neighbors. Final update. Did everyone know about last night? I called Bobby and left another message. This made the 10th one I left. I wondered whether he was listening to them and just didn't want to call me back, or if he just hadn't get the messages yet. I called the number for his voicemail service and entered his security PIN number. I listened to all of his messages. Most of them were from me, but there were 3 that got my attention. One was a message from the jewelry store that told him that he couldn't return the ring because it had been inscribed, but maybe they could cover the inscription or change it if he found someone new. The next was from one of those skanks he worked with telling him she'd seen him in his office, and she thought he looked like he needed cheering up, so she was asking him out to lunch or dinner, his choice. The bish even told him that if he chose dinner he could upgrade to the deluxe package that included breakfast at her place for no extra charge. I should walk over there and dot out of that bish, I thought. But it was the last message that really hurt me. It was from his mother and she told him that she loved him and she hoped he'd feel better soon. She told him that she understood what he had lost. But sometimes the best way to get over a bad situation was to start again. Then she told him about some floozy he used to go out with who'd been back from college for a couple of years, and that maybe he should give her a call when he felt ready. It seemed like the whole world was ready to write me off, but I was determined to put this behind us and get him back. I guess this is where I should start putting together my nefarious plan to get back at Phil and Rochelle for what they did to my relationship. But there was nothing I could do. Phil didn't want me because he really liked skinny women like Rochelle. Rochelle didn't care that Phil ducked me because she knew that every once in a while he just wanted to stick it to a big girl for a change of pace. I didn't ever want to see Phil again, and sex with him was revolting. It just made me miss Bobby more. I called Bobby thousands of times until one day he just changed his number and I couldn't get the new one. I tried waiting by the apartment, but he'd pull away every time he saw me and they wouldn't let me inside the building. I couldn't get in the building he worked in either. Then one day it happened. I saw the Mustang pull up and Bobby got out. He'd gotten his hair cut and he looked great. He hadn't seen me yet and he walked around to the passenger side. He reached in and a girl got out of the car. He took her hand and crushed my heart all in the same movement. She was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. But the thing that hurt the most was the way she looked at him. She looked at him the way he used to look at me. And he gave her that look right back. I knew then that it was over between Bobby and me. There was no way I'd ever get him back. That was 3 years ago and I still think about him now. I have a full life though. I go to work, still at the same restaurant chain. I got a bit depressed over Bobby for a while. And did pick up a bit of weight, so I'm no longer a hostess, but I'm the best dishwasher they have. Outside of work I put in a lot of time posting ads. I know that there's another Bobby out there somewhere. I just have to find him. I also moved into an apartment right down the street from Bobby's place. It's not too close because I don't want to be accused of stalking them or anything. Besides, with my telescope I can see right in their windows. It's almost like I was there with them. I'm just waiting for that bitch to make a mistake. And she will, because she's only human. We can all be fooled or be a fool under the right circumstances, and a fool and her honey will soon part. Thank you for being a part of our journey, and we look forward to sharing more powerful stories with you in the future. We encourage you to subscribe to our channel and stay connected with our community. Remember, this channel exists because of your support, and I want it to be a place where we can all come together, learn, and have a great time. Your feedback is vital, and I appreciate every single suggestion and comment you provide. Take care of yourself and see you soon. Second story. My boyf cheated on me for 28 months of our relationship. We began our relationship with a long-distance dynamic, as he pursued his undergrad abroad while I embarked on my master's degree. The introduction of a new group of friends with a higher ratio of guys to girls during my studies made him insecure. Consequently, he engaged in inappropriate conversations, including sexting and sharing explicit images, with a girl he met on Tinder before me. This wasn't an isolated incident, as there was another woman he had been involved with before me. During my Miami trip with the same group of friends, where I made a mistake while under the influence and promptly confessed, he experienced further insecurity and planned to meet this woman. I later discovered there were likely other instances of infidelity during the first year of our relationship. As time went on, he moved to a different city, and our relationship remained long distance. He downloaded Bumble, justifying it by claiming he wanted to explore whether he could find someone better, despite still being in a relationship with me. Upon my relocation to the same city, I caught him sexting the woman he had hooked up with earlier, again justified by his insecurities about our intimate life. Initially aware of only the sexting incident, I later uncovered a series of cheating episodes throughout our relationship. Despite being devastated, as I believed we were deeply in love, he has since put forth efforts to change. He acknowledges his insecurities and poor communication skills, sharing his shame with his mother and close friends. Personal and couples therapy has been initiated, and he's been actively reassuring and loving. While I love him deeply, I grapple with the understanding that his actions have transformed me from a cheerful person to someone profoundly anxious and mentally distressed. Despite contemplating leaving, he convinces me to stay, emphasizing his commitment to change. While his actions seem convincing, the challenge lies in reconciling his past behavior with his present willingness to transform. I find myself torn between waiting to see if genuine change occurs and the undeniable compatibility we share, characterized by a year of harmonious living together without conflicts. The complexity of the situation leaves me uncertain about the best course of action. Third story. My girlfriend of 10 months has been cheating on me for 6 of them. Hey everyone, hope your morning is going better than mine. Just discovered that my girlfriend has been deceiving and cheating on me for the past 6 months. I never thought it could happen to me, ever. I loved her immensely, and she assured me countless times that she felt the same. Well, turns out that wasn't the case. Throughout the past 6 months, she's been cheating and lying to me while consistently seeking financial help. I ended up emptying my entire bank account over the span of 6 months to support her through her struggle. I believed that by doing this, I would demonstrate my strength and dedication to her, showcasing how much I loved her. But it all came crashing down this morning when she revealed that she has been living with and intimately involved with another man. They share a home, a dog, and a life together. She apologized for taking so long to disclose this information and wished the best for me. Now I have nothing. I gave my all to her, and now I'm left with nothing. My mind is grappling with 3 conflicting options: cry and endure the suffering while struggling to piece my life together financially, as I'm now facing challenges in paying rent; seek revenge, do everything in my power to make her experience the same pain I've endured not just now but for the past 6 months; retreat to isolation and wither away gradually. Food loses its taste, and the air doesn't feel the same. Any thoughts? Thanks for joining us on this chapter of Relation Tales. If you were moved by these stories, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Don't miss out on the upcoming emotional roller coaster of relationships. Your support means the world, and we can't wait to share more compelling tales with you. Until next time, remember, Every relationship has a story worth telling. See you soon.